My phone buzzed during match point. I glanced down at the corporate box seat, expecting a work update. Instead, my heart dropped like a stone into my stomach. "You're fired. We're going in another direction. Leave your badge when you're back." Leonard. My hand started shaking uncontrollably. Here I was at the French Open, supposedly a reward from my boss Leonard for my hard work, and he fires me by text. The crowd roared as the tennis ball sailed past, but all I could hear was blood pounding in my ears like thunder. The older man sitting beside me noticed my obvious distress. He had silver hair and kind eyes, wearing an expensive but understated suit that spoke of quiet wealth. "Bad news?" he asked quietly, his voice gentle and concerned. I tried desperately not to cry. "I just got fired." He studied me for a moment, then handed me his pristine handkerchief. "I'm sorry to hear that. What company?" "C&C Systems," I whispered, embarrassed to be falling apart in front of a complete stranger. His expression changed slightly, becoming more serious. "I think we should talk after the match," he said gently. I had no idea that this quiet man owned 51% of my company. 3 months earlier, I thought I was finally getting the promotion I truly deserved. Leonard had unofficially promised me the creative director position during our quarterly review. I'd led our biggest campaign that year, bringing in $2 million in new business. I mentored 3 junior staff members who all got promoted under my careful guidance. "Amy, you're ready for the next level," Leonard had said during our one-on-one meeting. "The creative director role is practically yours already." I worked even harder after that encouraging conversation. 60-hour weeks became 70 without complaint. I missed my nephew's birthday party to finish a crucial presentation. I canceled romantic dates to review campaign proposals. Everything was for that promised promotion. The day of the announcement, I sat in the conference room with a confident smile on my face. Leonard walked in with a fratty-looking guy I'd never seen before in my life. "Everyone, meet our new creative director, Brad Morrison. He's a good friend from business school." My stomach dropped to the floor. Brad had no experience in our industry whatsoever. He'd never worked on a single campaign, but he had something I didn't. He was Leonard's fraternity brother. I kept my face neutral, but inside, I was completely crushed. 2 weeks after Brad's hiring, Leonard called me in complete panic. "Amy, I need you to handle the Peterson client meeting today. Family emergency came up unexpectedly." I dropped everything to prepare for the crucial presentation. Peterson Industries was worth $3 million annually to our bottom line. I spent the morning reviewing their account, updating slides, and practicing talking points until they were perfect. The meeting went perfectly beyond expectations. I secured a contract extension and upsold them on 2 additional services worth $500,000. Mr. Peterson even complimented our exceptional account management afterward. Later that evening, I saw Leonard's Instagram story posted publicly. He was at a beach resort in Miami, cocktail in hand, grinning widely. His family emergency was a vacation with his mistress, a woman from accounting who wasn't his wife. I'd covered for his lies and saved a major client while he was cheating on his family shamelessly. HR knew about the affair. Everyone knew. But Leonard had connections on the board, so nothing ever happened to him. I should have spoken up then. Instead, I stayed quiet and loyal, thinking my dedication would eventually be rewarded properly. I was so terribly wrong. When Mom had her stroke, I called Leonard immediately without hesitation. "I need to work remotely for 2 weeks while she recovers. I can handle everything from Boston efficiently." "Amy, we all have personal lives," he said coldly without any empathy. "This is a business, not a charity. If you can't commit fully, maybe this job isn't right for you." I flew back to New York the next day, leaving Mom with my worried sister. I'd worked for C&C Systems for 5 loyal years. I'd never taken a sick day. I'd sacrificed relationships, friendships, and family time for this ungrateful company. And Leonard threatened my job because my mother almost died in the hospital. That month, my annual bonus was cut by 40% without warning. Leonard's note said I'd shown lack of focus and personal distractions affecting work quality unfairly. My campaign numbers were actually higher than the previous year by 15%. My client satisfaction scores were perfect across the board. But Leonard punished me for having a legitimate family emergency. I stayed because I believed things would get better eventually. I thought my hard work would speak for itself. Looking back, I realized Leonard was already planning to get rid of me permanently. The Marcus Industries disaster happened in February during a routine meeting. Leonard had a lunch meeting with their executive team. He came back drunk and visibly angry. "Those uptight idiots don't know good marketing when they see it," he slurred during our staff meeting inappropriately. By 4 p.m., I got a panicked call from Marcus Industries. They were canceling their $2 million contract, effective immediately without negotiation. Mr. Trent made some inappropriate comments about our company culture. Their VP explained professionally, "We can't work with someone who disrespects our values." I didn't think twice. I just acted on pure instinct. I booked a red-eye flight to Chicago and showed up at their headquarters the next morning unannounced. "I'm here to apologize on behalf of CNC Systems," I told their executive team sincerely. "Mr. Trent's comments were unacceptable. We value your partnership and want to make this right." I spent 3 exhausting days in Chicago, meeting with every key stakeholder. I restructured their entire campaign strategy and offered a 20% discount on the first quarter generously. They agreed to stay with us. When I returned to New York, Leonard held a company meeting. "Thanks to my quick thinking and personal relationships, we saved the Marcus Industries account," he announced proudly. Not one mention of my name or effort. The French Open tickets should have been my first obvious clue. Leonard never gave rewards without ulterior motives behind them. "Amy, you've been working so hard lately," he said, sliding an envelope across my desk casually. "Take a long weekend in Paris. Corporate box seats to the French Open. You deserve it." I was suspicious but genuinely excited. I'd never been to Paris, never watched tennis from expensive corporate seats. Maybe Leonard was finally recognizing my contributions properly. The night before my flight, I overheard him on a phone call accidentally. "She'll be out of the country when we make the announcement. Cleaner that way." My blood ran cold with realization. He was firing me while I was away, so I couldn't confront him face to face. The reward was just a way to avoid dealing with the aftermath. I almost canceled the trip entirely. But I'd already taken the time off, and frankly, I wanted to see Paris before my world fell apart completely. Sitting in that corporate box, watching the match, I realized how perfectly Leonard had planned this cruel move. Fire me by text while I'm thousands of miles away. By the time I get back, he'll have told everyone I wasn't a good fit and moved on. He thought he was so clever. He had no idea who was sitting beside me. After the match ended, the stranger led me to a private lounge behind the corporate boxes quietly. The walls were lined with photos of tennis legends, and crystal glasses sat on mahogany tables elegantly. "My name is Simon Coulter," he said, settling into a leather chair across from me comfortably. "I own 51% of CNC Systems." My mouth fell open in complete shock. Simon Coulter was a legend in the business world. He'd built 3 companies from the ground up, then became an investor. I'd never seen his photo because he avoided media attention deliberately. "You own my company?" I whispered in disbelief. "I'm the majority shareholder, yes. I've been hearing troubling rumors about management lately. Your situation confirms my concerns." He poured 2 glasses of water and slid one across to me thoughtfully. "Tell me about Leonard Trent." For the next hour, I told him everything honestly. The stolen promotions, the lies, the harassment about my mother's stroke. Simon listened without interrupting, occasionally taking notes on his phone carefully. "I've been considering whether to replace Leonard for months," he finally said seriously. "But I needed an insider's perspective, someone who knew the day-to-day operations." He looked at me seriously. "Amy, would you be willing to help me fix this company?" I felt a spark of hope for the first time in months. Back in my Paris hotel room, I couldn't sleep at all. Simon had given me his lawyer's contact information and asked me to document everything Leonard had done wrong meticulously. I spent hours writing emails, organizing files, and creating a timeline of Leonard's misconduct systematically. Every stolen credit, every inappropriate comment, every violation of company policy. The next morning, Simon's lawyer called me promptly. "Miss Halston, I've reviewed your employment contract carefully. Leonard misclassified your position to deny you executive benefits." What does that mean exactly? I asked. It means you're legally entitled to a $300,000 severance package and board appeal rights that were illegally bypassed when you were terminated. My heart raced with excitement. Leonard didn't follow proper procedure? Not even close to proper. We can file for immediate arbitration, and based on your documentation, we have a strong case for wrongful termination. For 5 years, I'd played by Leonard's rules completely. I'd been professional, quiet, and loyal while he broke every employment law in the book. Now it was time to play by the real rules, the legal ones. I smiled for the first time since getting that devastating text message. The flight back to New York felt different this time. I wasn't the broken, defeated woman who'd left 3 days earlier. I had a plan, powerful allies, and legal protection backing me. I met Simon's lawyer, Margaret Hawkins, at her Manhattan office the next day. She was sharp, professional, and had a reputation for winning impossible cases against powerful opponents. "We're filing for arbitration today," she explained confidently. Leonard's termination violated federal labor laws, state employment regulations, and your contract terms. She spread documents across her desk methodically. "We're also requesting a full audit of his management practices. Your testimony about the Marcus Industries incident suggests financial misconduct." I signed the paperwork with steady hands. "What happens next?" "Leonard gets served tomorrow morning. He'll probably try to settle quickly to avoid public scrutiny. But based on what you've told me, I recommend we push for full reinstatement and his removal." "Can we actually get him fired?" Margaret smiled confidently. "Amy, you're not just an employee anymore. You're a shareholder's key witness in a corporate misconduct investigation. Leonard has more to worry about than just your case." I left her office feeling powerful for the first time in years. Leonard called me that evening, 20 minutes after being served with arbitration papers officially. "Amy, what the hell is this about? We can work something out reasonably." I'd prepared for this call carefully. Margaret had coached me on what to say and, more importantly, what not to say under any circumstances. "Leonard, I'm just following legal advice." "Legal advice? Come on, you're being dramatic. So you got fired. It happens every day. I'll write you a good reference letter." I recorded the call, as Margaret suggested specifically. "Why did you fire me, Leonard?" "Honestly, you weren't cut out for leadership roles. You took things too personally. Business isn't about feelings, Amy." Perfect. He just admitted that my termination was based on gender stereotypes, not performance. "I need to go," I said calmly. "Wait, Amy. Don't make this complicated unnecessarily. I'm offering you a good reference and 6 months severance. Take it." "I'll consider it," I lied, then hung up. I immediately sent the recording to Margaret. Within an hour, she called back laughing. "Amy, he just handed us a discrimination case on a silver platter. Gender-based termination is exactly what we needed to prove." Leonard thought he was negotiating from strength. Instead, he just destroyed his own defense completely. Simon moved quickly and decisively. Within a week, the board authorized a full audit of Leonard's expense accounts. I provided Margaret with every file I'd saved over the years. The results were devastating and comprehensive. Leonard had charged over $60,000 in client entertainment expenses that directly linked to his affair. Restaurant bills, hotel rooms, weekend trips, all paid for with company money. Margaret called me with updates regularly. He took his mistress to the same Miami resort where he claimed to have a family emergency. Company credit card paid for everything. Is that illegal? It's embezzlement. Using company funds for personal relationships violates fiduciary duty. The board could press criminal charges if they wanted. I felt a mixture of satisfaction and pity. Leonard had destroyed his own career through greed and stupidity. Simon's investigator also discovered that Leonard had hired 3 friends in the past year, all without proper interviews or background checks. Brad, the new creative director, was making $40,000 more than industry standard. "The board is furious," Margaret explained. "They trusted Leonard to run the company responsibly. Instead, he treated it like his personal ATM." The clock was ticking on Leonard's career, and he didn't even know it yet. HR reached out through Margaret professionally. They'd found 3 other women who'd been fired under suspicious circumstances in the past 2 years. All had been high performers. All had complained about Leonard's behavior before being terminated unfairly. "We'd like you to testify in arbitration," the HR director explained during a conference call. "Your case could help us protect other employees in the future." I agreed immediately without hesitation. This wasn't just about my career anymore. It was about stopping Leonard from hurting other women. Margaret scheduled depositions with all four of us. The stories were eerily similar and disturbing. Leonard would promise promotions, then give them to his friends. He'd make inappropriate comments about our emotional decision-making. He'd punish us for having families or personal lives. One woman, Sarah, had been fired after requesting maternity leave legally. Another, Jennifer, was terminated for attitude problems after rejecting Leonard's advances at a company party. The pattern was clear. Leonard targeted successful women and drove them out when they threatened his authority or rejected his inappropriate behavior. I realized how lucky I was to have Simon's support. The other women had faced Leonard alone and lost everything. Now we were fighting back together as a united front. Margaret discovered that the NDA Leonard had pressured me to sign was completely invalid legally. "The language violates federal labor laws," she explained. "You can't legally prevent someone from reporting workplace misconduct." This meant I was free to speak about everything Leonard had done. The threats, the stolen credit, the harassment, all of it could be used in arbitration without restriction. Leonard's lawyer tried to claim I was bound by confidentiality agreements during the preliminary hearing. Margaret laughed during the hearing. "Your Honor, this NDA attempts to silence an employee from reporting illegal discrimination. It's unenforceable under federal law completely." The arbitrator agreed immediately. Leonard's lawyer looked embarrassed and unprepared. "Furthermore," Margaret continued confidently, "Mr. Trent's attempt to enforce an illegal contract demonstrates a pattern of legal misconduct." I watched Leonard's face turn red from across the room. His expensive lawyer was being outmaneuvered by basic legal facts. The arbitrator ruled that I could discuss anything relevant to my employment at CNC Systems freely. Leonard's wall of silence had just crumbled. That afternoon, Margaret filed additional charges based on the invalid NDA. Leonard wasn't just facing termination anymore, he was facing potential legal action for attempting to obstruct a federal investigation. I had one more card to play strategically. Brad Morrison, the fraternity brother who'd stolen my promotion, was struggling badly in the role. He'd made several costly mistakes and alienated 2 major clients already. I called him directly. "Brad, I heard you're having challenges with the Henderson campaign. I worked on their account for 3 years. Maybe I can offer some helpful insights." He was desperate enough to meet me for coffee immediately. I gave him detailed advice about Henderson Industries, including their preference for traditional marketing approaches over digital campaigns. Brad thanked me profusely and promised to implement my suggestions immediately the next day. The next day, he pitched a completely traditional campaign to Henderson Industries, a company that had specifically requested cutting-edge digital marketing strategies. They fired CNC Systems on the spot without discussion. Leonard was furious and called an emergency meeting. He berated Brad in front of the entire creative team publicly. "How could you misread the client so badly?" I'd fed Brad accurate information about Henderson's old preferences deliberately, but their leadership had changed 6 months ago, and the new executives wanted innovative digital strategies. Brad had embarrassed himself and lost a $1 million account by following outdated advice. Leonard never suspected I'd orchestrated the whole thing perfectly. Simon arranged for me to meet privately with 3 board members yesterday. They wanted to hear my vision for fixing CNC Systems completely. I prepared for weeks, creating a detailed presentation about employee retention, client satisfaction, and financial accountability measures. "The company has a reputation problem," I explained clearly. "We've lost talented employees and struggled to keep major clients. Leadership changes could restore confidence." Board member Patricia Williams nodded approvingly. "What specific changes would you recommend?" "First, implement transparent promotion processes. Second, establish anonymous employee feedback systems. Third, require approval for executive expenses over $500. They were impressed by my detailed plan and thorough research. I'd identified specific problems and offered practical solutions. "Miss Halston," said board member Robert Cohen, "would you consider a consulting role to help implement these changes?" My heart raced with excitement. I'd be honored to help rebuild the company. Simon smiled from across the table knowingly. Amy has the trust of the employees and deep knowledge of our operations. She could stabilize things while we transition leadership. The board voted unanimously to offer me a consulting position. Leonard had no idea that the woman he'd fired was being invited back by the board of directors. Margaret filed the formal arbitration case on a Tuesday morning precisely. By Thursday, C&C Systems lawyers were offering a settlement. $200,000 and a confidentiality agreement, Margaret told me over the phone. They want this to disappear quickly and quietly. What do you think? I think they're scared. Leonard's misconduct is worse than they realized, and they know we have evidence of financial crimes. I thought about the other women Leonard had hurt, about future employees who might face his abuse. I don't want money. I want my reputation restored and Leonard removed permanently. Can we demand that? Margaret paused thoughtfully. Amy, that's a much bigger fight. Are you sure you're ready? I'm sure. I want full public reinstatement, a written apology, and Leonard's termination. No confidentiality agreement whatsoever. That's going to cost them millions and create a media nightmare. Good. Maybe other companies will think twice before protecting abusive managers. Margaret laughed appreciatively. I like your style. Let's reject the settlement and push for everything. Leonard thought he could buy his way out of trouble. Instead, he was about to learn that some fights can't be won with money. Simon hired me as a consultant while the arbitration continued. My job was to quietly rebuild employee morale and stabilize client relationships systematically. I started by implementing anonymous feedback systems carefully. Employees could report problems without fear of retaliation. The responses were eye-opening and disturbing. Leonard plays favorites and ignores qualified candidates regularly. Management doesn't listen to employee concerns ever. Several talented people have quit because of toxic leadership. I compiled the feedback into a comprehensive report for the board. The pattern was clear. Leonard had created a hostile work environment that was driving away top talent. My next step was client outreach strategically. I called every major account to assess their satisfaction levels honestly. 3 clients admitted they'd considered switching to competitors because of poor communication. Within 2 weeks, I'd identified the core problems and started implementing solutions immediately. Employee satisfaction scores improved dramatically. Simon was impressed by the rapid progress. Amy, you've accomplished more in 2 weeks than Leonard did in 6 months. I was rebuilding the company I loved, one relationship at a time. The best part? Leonard had no idea I was working there again. The audit revealed something unexpected and damning. Leonard's mistress, Jessica from accounting, had been falsifying expense reports at his direction. Margaret called with the shocking news. She's agreed to testify in exchange for immunity. Apparently, Leonard threatened her job if she didn't help cover up his expenses. Jessica's testimony was devastating and comprehensive. She had emails, receipts, and recorded conversations proving that Leonard had forced her to participate in embezzlement. He told me it was normal for executives, she explained during her deposition. He said everyone did it, and I'd be fired if I reported him. Jessica had been another victim of Leonard's abuse of power. He'd manipulated her into illegal activity, then used their affair to ensure her silence. Her cooperation gave Margaret enough evidence for criminal charges. The district attorney was now investigating Leonard for embezzlement and coercion officially. Leonard's lawyer tried to discredit Jessica's testimony, but the evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Bank records, credit card statements, and hotel receipts all supported her claims. Leonard wasn't just losing his job anymore. He was facing potential prison time. Margaret's investigator found the smoking gun in Leonard's deleted emails yesterday. IT had recovered a message he'd sent to HR 6 months earlier. Amy Halston is becoming emotional deadweight. She questions my decisions and undermines my authority. We need to find a reason to terminate her before she becomes a bigger problem. The email proved that Leonard had planned my termination long before any performance issues existed. He'd fired me for challenging his authority, not for poor work. Margaret was ecstatic about the discovery. This proves premeditation and gender bias. He literally called you emotional for doing your job well. The email also revealed that Leonard had asked HR to document any minor mistakes I made. They'd refused, because my performance was exemplary consistently. This is the most clear-cut case of discriminatory termination I've ever seen, Margaret explained. Leonard documented his own illegal intentions. The board's lawyer called Margaret immediately after reviewing the email. We need to settle this case before it becomes public knowledge. But it was too late for settlements now. Leonard had provided written proof of his discrimination, and Margaret wasn't backing down. Leonard had literally written his own termination letter without realizing it. Simon called a special shareholder meeting for Friday morning specifically. As a key witness in the misconduct investigation, I was invited to attend officially. Leonard walked into the boardroom confident and smiling broadly. He had no idea what was coming next. Leonard, Simon began seriously, the board has completed its investigation into your management practices. Leonard's smile faltered slightly with concern. Investigation? Patricia Williams opened a thick folder deliberately. We found evidence of embezzlement, discrimination, sexual harassment, and breach of fiduciary duty. Leonard's face went white with shock. This is ridiculous. I've been with this company for 8 years successfully. Simon slid the email across the table slowly. Is this your correspondence about Amy Halston? Leonard read it quickly, then looked up in panic. That was taken out of context completely. The context is that you plan to fire a high-performing employee because she challenged your authority, Robert Cohen said coldly. Margaret presented the evidence methodically, the expense fraud, the discriminatory terminations, the illegal NDA attempts. Leonard tried to defend himself desperately, but every excuse made him look worse. After 20 minutes, Simon called for a vote. All in favor of terminating Leonard Trent immediately? 7 hands went up unanimously. Leonard was fired. Security was waiting outside to escort him from the building. Watching Leonard get escorted out was surreal and satisfying. He carried a small cardboard box, the same kind of box I'd imagined packing when he fired me by text. He looked confused and angry, demanding to speak with board members who'd already left the room quietly. Security calmly guided him toward the elevator. I didn't feel smug or triumphant watching his downfall. I felt relieved. Leonard couldn't hurt anyone else now. Simon approached me as the boardroom emptied slowly. Amy, the board would like to offer you the interim COO position while we search for permanent leadership. Chief Operating Officer. It was 3 levels above the creative director role Leonard had stolen from me. I accept, I said without hesitation or doubt. My first decision was to promote Brad Morrison's assistant, Maria, to lead the creative team. She'd been doing most of Brad's work anyway, while he struggled with basic concepts. Brad was reassigned to a junior role more appropriate for his experience level. I wasn't cruel, just honest about his abilities. Within hours, news of Leonard's termination spread through the office like wildfire. Employees who'd been quiet and fearful suddenly seemed energized and hopeful. I had important work to do. My first week as COO was focused on rebuilding trust systematically. I implemented the anonymous feedback system permanently and established monthly all-hands meetings where employees could ask questions directly. I also created a fair promotion process with clear criteria and diverse review panels. No more fraternity brother appointments or secret decisions. The client recovery plan was working too successfully. I personally called every account to introduce myself and address their concerns honestly. 2 clients who'd been considering leaving decided to stay. Sarah, one of the women who'd been wrongfully terminated, called me directly. Amy, I heard about Leonard. Would C&C consider rehiring me? Send me your resume today, I replied immediately without hesitation. I hired back all 3 women Leonard had fired illegally. Their skills and experience made the company stronger immediately. The office culture transformed within weeks dramatically. People stayed for optional training sessions. They collaborated on projects without being forced. They seemed genuinely excited about their work again. Simon visited frequently and was amazed by the changes. It's like working at a completely different company. I'd proven that success comes from respecting people, not controlling them. The letters started arriving in my second week as COO consistently. Handwritten notes from current and former employees thanking me for standing up to Leonard bravely. You inspired me to report my manager's inappropriate behavior. Seeing you fight back gave me courage to ask for the promotion I deserved. Thank you for showing that good people can win. Some letters were from women I'd never met who'd heard about the case through industry networks. They shared their own stories of workplace harassment and discrimination. I realized that my fight with Leonard had become bigger than just one company. I'd become a symbol of resistance against workplace abuse. A reporter from Business Weekly called requesting an interview. Your case is inspiring women across the industry, she explained. I agreed to the interview, hoping my story would encourage other employees to speak up when they faced discrimination. The article ran with the headline, "How One Executive Fought Back Against Workplace Bullying and Won." Leonard's misconduct was now public knowledge permanently. His reputation in the industry was destroyed forever. Leonard sent me one final email from his personal account 3 weeks after his termination abruptly. "You really think you're better than me?" I stared at the message for a long time, remembering all the pain he'd caused. Then I typed my response carefully. "It's just business. We all have lives." I was quoting his own words back to him, the cruel dismissal he'd given me when my mother had her stroke. He replied immediately angrily, "That's different." "No, Leonard, it isn't different at all. You taught me that business isn't about feelings. Now you're learning the same lesson." I blocked his email address and deleted the conversation permanently. Leonard Trent was finally out of my life forever. Margaret called that afternoon with news that Leonard had been indicted for embezzlement. He'll probably plea bargain, but he's facing prison time. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall. I was too busy building something better. The company was thriving, employees were happy, and clients were impressed with our renewed focus on excellence. Leonard's reign of fear was over permanently. A year later, Simon invited me back to the French Open graciously. This time, I brought my sister as my guest, the same sister who'd supported me through Mom's stroke and my career struggles. We sat in the same corporate box where I'd received that devastating text message. But now, I was the permanent COO of a thriving company, and Leonard was working at a small firm in another state. "Do you ever regret fighting back?" my sister asked as we watched the match. I thought about the question seriously and honestly. The legal battle had been exhausting and stressful. I'd risked my career and reputation by challenging a powerful man. But then I remembered the letters from women I'd inspired, the employees who felt safe at work again, and the clients who trusted our company because we'd proven our integrity. "No regrets," I said, smiling as the sun set over the tennis court beautifully. "Sometimes you have to fight for what's right." My phone buzzed with a text from Maria, our new creative director. She'd just won a major client with an innovative campaign. I'd built something that would last, a company culture based on respect, fairness, and excellence. Leonard's text message that day had felt like the end of my world. Instead, it was the beginning of something better. Success tastes sweetest when it's earned the right way, completely.